Ethan Black was not a hero, he was just a mercenary. A man with quick hands and quicker words, moving from planet to planet, taking whatever job paid him best. On this day, he found himself on Tarsi's Prime, a city full of aliens, smugglers, traders, and mercenaries like himself. The air smelled like burning metal and sweet spices. Alien music played from a distance. Neon lights glowed in colors Ethan didn't even have names for. He was walking through the crowded bazaar, looking for a new plasma rifle, when he saw her, an alien woman, tall and muscular, standing almost 8 feet tall. Her skin a smooth emerald green, glowing faintly under the market lights. She wore heavy black armor with silver markings. 2 curved swords strapped to her back. Ethan wasn't sure what kind of alien she was, but the crowd gave her plenty of space. People whispered her name, Vetra, a legendary warrior, feared across several systems. But Ethan was new here, and he wasn't the type to care about titles. Distracted, he accidentally bumped into her. Her back was turned, and his hand lightly brushed against her hip. "Whoa," Ethan said without thinking, eyes glancing down. "Nice armor. And a nice butt." The moment those words left his mouth, the entire bazaar went silent. Even the music stopped, as if the whole planet held its breath. Ethan blinked in confusion until he saw the alien warrior slowly turn around. Her bright, glowing yellow eyes locked onto him. For a moment, she said nothing, her expression unreadable. But then something unexpected happened. A faint blush appeared on her green cheeks. For someone so fearsome, seeing her blush was strange. Ethan opened his mouth to say something else, but before he could, a giant green hand slapped him across the chest. It felt like getting hit by a steel wall. His body flew backwards, smashing into a vendor's stall, fruit and metal parts. Falling everywhere, Ethan groaned, lying on the ground, vision spinning. The crowd gathered around but kept their distance. Security droids rolled forward, their lights flashing, ready to arrest the human. But Vetra raised her hand, her voice sharp and powerful. "Leave him," she said. The droid stopped immediately, obeying her command. Slowly, Ethan sat up, coughing, wiping blood from his lip, through the ringing in his ears. He watched as Vetra turned away and walked back into the crowd, her long tail, dark and sharp like a blade, flicked once behind her. Everyone kept looking at Ethan, whispering things like, "He's still alive. Vetra didn't kill him?" Lucky fool. Ethan's heart pounded as he pulled himself up. He was bruised, sure, but part of him was smiling. "Worth it," he muttered under his breath. The strange thing wasn't just her slap or her strength. It was that blush. Why would someone like Vetra react like that to a simple compliment? Ethan had no idea, but one thing was certain: he wouldn't forget this day. And neither would anyone else. That night, as he sat in a small bar nursing his injuries, strangers came up to him, asking if the story was true. "Did you really say that to Vetra? Are you insane, human?" Ethan just smiled, sipping his drink, feeling his ribs ache with every breath. But he didn't care. In a galaxy full of rules, fear, and power, he had accidentally done something no one else dared to do. And somehow he was still breathing. As the night grew darker, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Somehow deep inside, he knew he and Vetra would cross paths again. The slap still hurt, sure, but something about it made him grin anyway. The city of Tarsis Prime never really slept. After his bruised ribs from Vetra's slap started to feel normal again, Ethan went back to work. His job wasn't glamorous, moving supplies, protecting rich traders, or sometimes stealing things for the right price. But in the back of his mind, he kept thinking about her, that fearsome alien warrior with glowing yellow eyes and a face that blushed. He didn't know why she'd let him live, or why her hand had stopped the security droids, but he felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't done with her story. One night, Ethan took a job that paid a little too well: escort duty for a shipment of illegal plasma cores. A job like that meant danger, but Ethan wasn't the type to say no to easy credits. He was walking through the industrial sector, Dark alleys stretching like black veins through the city. That was when he felt it, a soft shuffle, too quiet for human ears. But Ethan's instincts were sharp. He wasn't alone. Out of the shadows, a group of masked thugs stepped out, weapons drawn. "Hand it over, human," one of them growled. Voice metallic through a voice changer. Ethan glanced around, knowing there was no easy escape. He didn't have Vitra's strength or size, just his wits and a small blaster. He pulled it slowly, but before he could fire, one of the thugs grabbed him from behind. Another punched him in the gut, making him drop the weapon. They weren't here to joke around. It wasn't about the cargo anymore. It was about leaving no witnesses. As Ethan fell to his knees, blood dripping from his mouth, he saw something, a shadow moving above them on the rooftop. At first, he thought it was just part of his fading vision. But then, from the sky itself, Vetra dropped down, landing with a thunderous crash. Her massive form towered over everyone, swords unsheathed, eyes glowing like fire. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the thugs panicked, firing their weapons at her. Vetra moved like lightning, dodging, slashing, throwing one man into the wall. The fight was over in seconds. Bodies lay unconscious or groaning on the ground. Ethan coughed, trying to sit up, looking at her through blurry eyes. She stepped closer, her voice calm. "Still getting into trouble, human," she said. Ethan managed a weak grin. "Didn't think you cared," he said, voice rough. Vetra knelt down, examining his bruises without touching him. "Don't speak like that to me again," she said quietly, but this time it wasn't anger. In her voice, it was something else. She turned, ready to leave as quickly as she'd arrived. But Ethan couldn't stop himself. "Wait," he called. "Why do you keep showing up?" Vetra paused for a long second, her back to him, then so soft he almost didn't hear it. She answered, "Because I don't know either." And just like that, she disappeared back into the shadows, leaving Ethan sitting there, bloody and confused, but strangely not alone. From that night forward, rumors started again. They called her the silent guardian of Tarsi's prime. But only Ethan knew the truth, that under all that armor and strength, Vetra wasn't just a warrior. She was watching him, for reasons even she couldn't explain yet. A few weeks passed since the night Vetra saved Ethan from the alley thugs. The story spread like wildfire, the human mercenary protected by Vetra herself. But Ethan wasn't interested in becoming famous. He was interested in figuring out why she kept showing up. Then came the job that changed everything. An old client offered Ethan a dangerous contract to retrieve stolen alien technology from a war-torn district outside the city. Good pay, high risk, perfect for someone like him. Ethan accepted, not expecting backup, not expecting Vetra, but fate had other plans. The place was a shattered industrial facility, half of it buried under broken metal and fire. Ethan moved carefully through the debris, blaster ready, visor showing red alerts all around him. Suddenly, enemy drones activated, hovering from the ceiling, weapons locked on. Blaster fire filled the air. Ethan ducked, rolling behind a crate, breathing hard. That's when he heard it. Metal boots landing behind him, the hum of energy swords igniting. He didn't even need to look. "Let me guess," Ethan muttered. "You again." Vetra stood over him, slicing through drones with deadly grace. Her face calm but her eyes burning. She moved like a storm, cutting through machine and enemy alike. Ethan jumped up, firing from cover, moving in sync with her without even planning it. For the first time, they fought side by side, human and alien. Two completely different beings, yet somehow perfectly matched. The battle lasted minutes, but it felt like forever. When the last drone exploded, the silence felt heavy. Ethan lowered his weapon, chest rising and falling. "You really have a habit of saving me," he said, voice rough but with a grin. Vetra didn't answer right away, simply cleaning her blade. Then she finally spoke. "You should not be here alone." "Neither should you," Ethan shot back, his grin widening. For a brief second, he thought he saw the corner of her mouth twitch. maybe a hidden smile, maybe not. They found the stolen tech together, securing it in a crate. But as they worked, Ethan noticed something strange. Vetra kept glancing at him, not the way a warrior watches an enemy, but something else. Vetra, he said quietly, why are you really here? She froze, looking down at him, her towering figure framed by flickering emergency lights. For a long moment, no words passed between them. Then, in a voice lower than before, she said, I don't understand it myself. That wasn't the kind of answer Ethan expected. Aliens like her weren't supposed to show weakness or confusion, but standing there with her, amidst smoke and broken machines, Ethan realized something. She wasn't just saving him out of duty. There was a connection forming, invisible but real. As they left the facility together, the fire and shadows behind them, Ethan couldn't help but feel it. This wasn't just another mission. It was the start of something neither of them could walk away from. Asterisk. The moons of Tarsi's prime hung low that night, painting the city in silver and green light. Ethan wasn't working any job this time. He wasn't chasing credits or running from trouble. Instead, he found himself standing in front of an old outpost bar on the city's edge, a place known simply as Steel Ember. He wasn't here for drinks. He was here because Vetra had told him to meet her. That fact alone made his heart race in a way no gunfight ever did. He stepped inside, eyes adjusting to the dim lights. The air smelled like oil smoke and alien spices. And there she was. Vetra sat in a corner booth, alone, her armor gleaming even in the shadows. A half-empty glass of something glowing purple sat on the table. Untouched, Ethan walked over slowly, sliding into the seat across from her. Didn't know warriors like you went to quiet places like this, he said, keeping his tone casual. Her yellow eyes flicked up at him, sharp and focused, but calmer than usual. I don't, she replied, voice low. Only tonight. Silence stretched between them like a drawn wire. Ethan leaned back, studying her face, carefully strong jawline, scars along her cheek, but somehow still almost beautiful in a dangerous way. Finally, he asked what had been burning in his mind for weeks. Why me, Vetra? He said quietly. Out of all the mercenaries, smugglers, and idiots in this city, why do you keep showing up for me? Vetra looked down at her drink, silent for a long time. Then softly she spoke. On my homeworld, emotions are seen as weakness. We train to fight, not to feel, she continued, fingers tapping the edge of the glass. But I don't fit. Ethan blinked, surprised. He'd never expected Vetra to say something like that. You don't fit? He echoed, voice gentle. She nodded once, armor creaking slightly as she moved. When you spoke to me that first day. When you said that foolish thing, she said, her voice quieter. It caught me off guard. Ethan grinned slightly, leaning forward. You mean when I said you had a nice butt? Her eyes narrowed sharply, and for a second he thought she might punch him again. But instead, she looked away, and for the first time, Ethan saw it clearly, her cheeks flushing green again. She was blushing, again in front of him, in a quiet bar where no one else could see. I should break your jaw, she muttered. But there was no heat in her voice now. Ethan just smiled, sitting back, feeling like he'd just won some silent battle. The bar's old music system hummed softly in the background, and for a while, neither of them spoke. They simply sat together in a kind of peace Ethan didn't know he'd been missing. When Vetra finally stood to leave, she paused beside him, looking down at him from her full height. You're reckless, she said quietly, and foolish. Ethan tilted his head, replying with a grin. Yeah, but you like that, don't you? For the first time, Vetra didn't deny it. She simply turned, walking away into the moonlit night, her tail flicking once behind her. And Ethan, sitting alone now, realized something even stranger than alien warriors and blushing giants. He wasn't chasing jobs anymore. He was chasing her. Whatever this was between them, it was real, even if neither of them could explain it yet. 3 days after the bar meeting, Ethan took on another contract, one he wouldn't have accepted if Vetra had been around to talk sense into him. His ship was hired to transport rare alien crystals across a dead sector called Echo Reach. That stretch of space was filled with broken stations, collapsed asteroids, and old battle debris floating endlessly. Halfway through the job, everything went wrong. A pirate ambushed silent ships with black sails, no warning, no signal, just weapons firing from the shadows. Ethan's ship took heavy damage, systems failing, alarms screaming. By some miracle, Ethan managed to launch an escape pod, slamming into a button seconds before fire swallowed his ship. The pod spun through space, metal creaking, life support flickering, and then total silence, drifting, trapped, no control, cold air and darkness. Wrapping around him like a coffin, he wasn't afraid to die exactly, but it felt lonely. Not how I pictured going out, Ethan muttered, voice cracking through the pod's comm system. He wasn't sure how much time passed before a new shadow appeared outside the small window. A ship, sleek and dark, too big for pirates. His heart jumped when he recognized the symbol on its side, a silver fang on green metal. Vetra. The pod's hatch opened with a hiss, freezing air rushing in as Vetra's tall form filled the doorway. Her armor looked like it always did, unbreakable, but her voice was different. Ethan. She shouted, kneeling beside him, "Are you alive?" Ethan coughed, grinning despite the pain. "Nice to see you too," he rasped. Without hesitation, Vetra grabbed him, pulling him into her arms as if he weighed nothing, carrying him like a broken weapon. For a second, Ethan couldn't tell if the warmth in his chest was blood loss or something else. Inside her ship, she laid him on a medical bed, her hands moving, quickly removing his jacket, checking his injuries. But there was something in her eyes now, a crack in the calm, controlled warrior he'd always known. Her voice softened, barely above a whisper. "You idiot. Why didn't you call me?" Ethan managed a small laugh. "Didn't want to bother you," he said. "Figured I'd handle it." Vetra's hands tightened into fists, her jaw clenching. "Stop being foolish," she hissed. "You could have died." Ethan tilted his head back, staring at the ship's cold ceiling. "Guess I wouldn't get to see you blush again if I did," he murmured, voice weaker now. For a heartbeat, Vetra froze completely. Then slowly her hand touched his cheek, the first gentle touch she'd ever given him. "You make no sense, human," she said quietly, her voice like thunder muffled by clouds. They spent hours in that ship together, trapped between star systems, waiting for safe passage clearance, and for the first time, neither of them spoke like warrior and mercenary. They spoke like two people, two beings who'd survived too many battles, who understood loneliness. When Ethan finally closed his eyes to rest, Vetra didn't leave. She sat beside him, silent guardian once again, her yellow eyes never leaving. His face. Out there in the cold void, there was no war, no contracts, no galaxies between them, only a silent truth neither of them wanted to admit. This was no longer just coincidence. It was something far deeper, something neither of them could run from anymore. The peace on Tarsi's Prime didn't last. Ethan had barely recovered from the escape pod incident when war broke out between Vetra's people, the Karzel, and a hostile alien empire called the Varnak Syndicate. Their fleets darkened the sky, cities turned into battlegrounds, trade routes became ambush points. Ethan wasn't the kind of man who joined armies, but this time, things felt different. He wasn't just fighting for credits anymore. He was fighting because Vetra was involved. When he showed up at the Karzel command center, all eyes turned toward him, a human mercenary standing in the middle of proud alien warriors. But Vetra didn't push him away. She only glanced at him once and said quietly, "You really are reckless." Ethan grinned, replying, "Told you I'm hard to get rid of." The mission was brutal: defend a supply station deep in the Ember Rings, an orbital belt constantly burning with firestorms and asteroid showers. Varnak Syndicate forces hit them hard, wave after wave of ships and soldiers. Ethan fought alongside Vetra in the thick of it, blaster in hand, ducking behind crates, while Vetra moved like a living storm. Her twin swords cut through enemies, her armor cracked and scorched but never broken. For the first time, Ethan saw her fight not as a silent protector, but as someone protecting everything she cared about, her people, her world. And maybe, though she'd never say it out loud, during a brutal push, Ethan spotted a sniper targeting Vetra. Without thinking, he dove into the open, firing his blaster and knocking the enemy down, but not before a plasma shot hit him. In the side, pain exploded through him like fire. He hit the ground hard, gasping, blood soaking his jacket. Through the haze he heard her voice, sharper than he'd ever heard it. "Ethan." Vetra was beside him in seconds, her swords forgotten, hands gripping his jacket, eyes blazing bright yellow for the first time ever in front of dozens of warriors. She knelt beside a human, ignoring the battle around them, her voice cracked. As she spoke, "Stay awake." Ethan managed a weak grin. "Didn't think I'd go out like this," he whispered, "without seeing you blush again." Her jaw tightened, face shifting from fury to something else, fear and something deeper. "I swear you will not die here," she said through clenched teeth, lifting him into her arms. Alien warriors stared as Vetra carried Ethan like a fallen brother, cutting through fire and wreckage until they reached the med bay. She didn't leave his side. Not for an hour, not for a day, not even when the battle was won. By the time Ethan opened his eyes again, the war outside had slowed, but something between them had changed completely. His first words, voice dry and cracked, were, "Did we win?" Vetra, sitting beside him, leaned forward, eyes softer now. "We won," she said quietly. But that wasn't the important part. For once, Ethan didn't joke. He simply reached out with a shaking hand, resting it on her armored wrist, and Vetra didn't pull away. In that quiet room, under flickering medbay lights, there were no more masks between them, human and alien, warrior and mercenary, two hearts finally admitting what they both knew for a long time. Neither of them wanted to fight alone anymore. The war had ended weeks ago, but for Ethan, everything still felt like battle, only now. It wasn't plasma fire or falling debris. It was figuring out what to do with himself. Now that things had changed, he wasn't just a wandering mercenary anymore, and Vetra wasn't just some untouchable warrior in black armor. They'd both survived something most people didn't: each other. One late evening, under the cracked skyline of Tarsi's Prime, Ethan stood outside the Steel Ember bar. The same bar where Vetra had first spoken about her world, her secrets, her rules. Now it felt different, quieter, heavier, like the city itself was waiting. She arrived exactly as he knew she would, walking through the mist and neon lights, tall as ever, her armor reflecting the moonlight, her glowing yellow eyes locked onto him without a word. But this time, there was no silence hanging between them. Ethan didn't joke, didn't tease. Instead, he stepped forward, close enough to see his reflection in her eyes. "I've been thinking," he said slowly. "All this time, all these fights, all these moments. We keep meeting like it's fate." Vetra's voice was low but steady. "Perhaps it is." Ethan breathed out through his nose, eyes narrowing slightly. "Then I'm done running," he said. "No more random jobs, no more drifting." He paused, searching her face for even the smallest reaction. "I want to stay," he added, voice serious now, "with you." For a long moment, Vetra said nothing. Wind moved between them, carrying the scent of metal and distant fire. Then slowly she raised her hand, placing it gently against Ethan's cheek, her armored fingers surprisingly warm against his skin. "I thought," she said quietly, "that I would never let a human this close." Her other hand rested lightly on his shoulder. "But you are not like the others." Ethan let out a quiet laugh, not mocking, just relieved. "Neither are you," he replied. For the first time since they'd met, Vetra removed her helmet fully, letting it drop into her other hand. Her face was sharper, softer than he'd imagined under the armor, green skin, Faint scars and eyes that didn't just burn, they held something deeper. Ethan reached up, touching the edge of her jaw carefully, as if she might vanish. But she didn't. Instead, Vetra leaned down slightly, bringing her forehead to rest gently against his. A silent gesture, older than words, older than species. Around them, the city lights flickered like stars. And in that moment, it wasn't about human or alien, mercenary, or warrior. It was just two beings finally choosing not to fight alone anymore. From that night forward, Ethan stayed, not as a wandering gun for hire, but as Vetra's partner, sometimes in battle, sometimes in peace, always side by side. And whenever someone asked Ethan how it all started, how a human mercenary won the respect of the fearsome Karzul warrior, he'd always grin and say, "I just told her she had a nice butt." And somewhere nearby, Vetra would always blush, just a little, before reminding him that her slap still hurt.